Hello, I'm Janvi from HomeNet South Asia. The role of HomeNet South Asia is to strengthen and promote home-based worker organizations. And today we are going to discuss a very important topic, which is social enterprises of home-based workers. So today I'd like to welcome all of you here. So we have Robin Amartya, CEO SABAH Nepal. We have Dinusha Rajaratnam, CEO SABAH Sri Lanka. Phunshuk Chodhan, Chairperson SABAH Bhutan. Seema Shah, CEO Sadhna, and Gauhar Sajid, Co-Chairperson SABAH Pakistan. Welcome everyone. So today we want your opinion as an expert on social enterprises of home-based workers. And the first question that I have is, what do home-based workers make in your country?
Well, I wouldn't call myself expert, but I've had more than 10 years of experience running social business organization here in Nepal. Working with the home-based workers. So in Nepal, home-based workers, they make wide range of products. Mostly handcrafted products. They're mostly into craft sector. They're also making all kinds of fabrics, hand-woven fabrics. And they're also doing food processing nowadays. So Handicraft Association of Nepal, they have 42 different kinds of other sectors of handicraft. So they're all involved in making of these kind of handicrafts.
Great. Phunshukji, would you like to add?
I think in the case of Bhutan, actually, largely, I think when it comes to the home-based workers, especially women home-based workers, there are, I think we can, in fact, when I divide the country into regions, in the eastern part of Bhutan and also in central, there's a tradition of weaving and textiles. So I think for a very long time, women, especially on a home-based basis, they have been really into weaving. In the eastern, extreme eastern part of Bhutan, they do a lot of weaving in silk and cotton. And in central Bhutan, more wool-based weaving. And whereas when you look at the southern parts of Bhutan and also western, then it's more agro-based. So, women home-based workers have been more into food processing, whether it's drying or, processing in different ways or pickling of stuff. So, yeah, I think these are largely the two areas in a way similar to Nepal, where it's more textile-based, fabric-based, and also food processing. These are things that women have comfortably done it out of their homes.
पाकिस्तान में ज़्यादातर जो है वो हमारी हाथ की कढ़ाइयाँ हैं, वही बनाते हैं. इसके अलावा जो है बाकी काम भी करते हैं, जैसे कपास को चुनना, उसको जो है वो करना. लेकिन जो हमारे साथ सबा के साथ काम करते हैं वो हाथ की कढ़ाइयाँ करते हैं और मुख्तलिफ़ तरह की हैं. जैसे हमारे चारों स्टेट्स में, सिंध में अलग कढ़ाई होगी, इसी तरह हमारे सवात केपी में अलग फुलकारी करते हैं. इसी तरह जो है बलूचिस्तान में दूसरी टाइप की होती है. फिर पंजाब में मुख्तलिफ़ तरह की कढ़ाइयाँ होती हैं. फिर साउथ पंजाब में अलग होती हैं, कश्मीर में बिल्कुल ही अलग होती है. तो इस तरह से जो है वो चारों स्टेट्स में जो है वो मुख्तलिफ़ कढ़ाइयाँ होती हैं.
सीमा जी?
India, I would say, also has women home-based workers, which is the largest component. I would say it's not into an organized sector, but it is contributing large amount to the economy of the country. They are involved in handicrafts. Handicrafts means, I would say, textile-wise, what other South Asian countries are having similar to them. It's into block printing, weaving, tying and dyeing, which is another formality, and embellishments. Embellishments, like Gauharji was saying, different states, in India also, different states have different handicraft things. Besides that, agriculture is also one of the main areas where the women are involved in the agri-base. I look at enterprises helping these groups of home-based workers organizing themselves and coming up with a branded work which will definitely take them further.
Dinusha ji, would you like to add?
Yeah. Actually, in Sri Lanka, we are engaging in food processing because of the So one of the university did a research. So the Sri Lankan economy, its population is increasing day by day. Food demanding increasing and the other thing is the women who are working in the private sector and government sector, they don't have time to cook. So therefore, they have identified that market opportunities. Therefore, we are being in a food processing sector. At the same time, so a little bit we are engaging in a handicraft sector. There are some other organizations, government sector having a handicraft council, but there is no any small institutions are for food sector. Therefore, we go for that food processing sector. Like we having a products like range like spices, grain-based products, flour-based products, and snacks, and ready-to-serve curry mixers. Like so, it's a various kind of products that we have producing.
Thank you. Seema ji, you talked about that these home-based workers organize. So my next question to all of you is, why do home-based workers organize in your countries?
I am personally of the opinion that organization helps them have a voice. And if we don't organize, see, home-based worker, it's quite a liquid population. If they are not organized and they cannot demand work, then the craft talent in which they are very well versed, if they don't get work, they might get into a labor market which is not their credibility, and country as a whole will lose out on a craft which was inherent or talent which was there in the country. So only if they are organized, they can come up with a product which will have design sense, which will have the current contemporary market sense, which the customer wants. The organization will help them, give them design and market sense besides the social security measures.
जैसे हमारे पाकिस्तान में अगर देखा जाए तो इससे पहले जब काम करते थे हम तो अपने घरों के लिए करते थे, कभी किसी के जहेज़ के लिए चीज़ तैयार कर ली, कभी किसी को गिफ्ट देने के लिए तैयार कर ली। तो जब हमने देखा कि ये चीज़ें जो हैं वो मार्केट में सेल हो रही हैं और हमें जो है वो मुख्तलिफ़ इदारे आके ट्रेनिंग्स करवा रहे हैं उसको मज़ीद बेहतर करने के लिए, तो फिर जो है वो सब इकट्ठा होना शुरू हो गए कि हमारी ये चीज़ें मज़ीद बेहतर बनेंगी और इसकी सेल अच्छी होगी और हमारी इनकम में इजाफ़ा होगा। तो बेसिकली जो है वो हमारे जो होम बेस्ड वर्कर जो हैं वो जमा होने का उनका फाइनेंशियल वो बहुत ज़्यादा फ़ायदा होता है, इसलिए वो जमा हो जाती हैं।
Right. Here, any one of you would like to answer that question?
Maybe taking it from a different angle, because I think in a small country and thinly populated country like Bhutan, and where, being in the mountains, because more than 70-80% of the population are, scattered all over the country. Only a small percentage are, a bit more concentrated in the capital city and a few satellite towns. There, it's like now, especially with the introduction and the success of the SABAH project, we are actually trying to introduce the concept of organizing themselves, to trying to bring women, home-based workers together for collective capacity building, collective marketing, so that, as, Meera was talking about, really increasing the, visibility and the voice of, the home-based workers together, so that together, I think we can facilitate and help them to become a sector, to be recognized and eventually to be reckoned with in a way. So that, when it comes to any support from the government, plans and programs and strategies, to whether it's for financing, whether it's for training, for export, then we can actually help our home-based workers to access all those kind of support from the government as well. And I think also, organizing home-based workers and their, into a group, into different community groups, I think also helps to, for home-based workers also in the end, they should not just be meal producers who are not really accountable to the market and to the clients. And I think as an organization, we can actually bring about that awareness that it's not only about making money, but it's also about the quality and the reliability And I think that aspect we can help by facilitating them and organizing them into groups.
I agree with all the points they have raised. It's very similar in Nepal as well. But what I see is, just to add on, peer support. When they have to do production, they need whatever support required in order to fulfill the orders, right? So peer learning is one. In terms of making of complicated designs, they wouldn't be able to do it by themselves, so they need that peer support, peer learning. And we already talked about designs. I agree with that also. So fulfillment of orders, clients wouldn't give a few pieces of order, so they require in quantity. So in order to fulfill that quantity, they need to be in a group, so in order to fulfill the orders. So in Nepalese context, we have seen these kind of groups being formalized. So a lot of the groups have formed cooperatives in various areas of the country, from the plains, from the urban areas to even to in the rural areas. And SABAH is promoting this community-owned business, of home-based workers. So community-owned business enterprises. So it's so they're in a way formalizing their businesses. So they see. So they're involved in entire chain of the we call it value chain, collecting of the raw materials all the way to finishing of the product, right? So also the marketing of the products. So that way they see more benefit. So so just to summarize, I guess we. Home-based workers are organizing because they see benefit in working together, and collective bargaining, collective marketing, all those things are there. But we see in the ground that they see more benefit working together.
Thank you, Robinji. Dinushaji, would you like to
actually I would like to expand the experience, my personal experience. So home-based workers are the women who are working at home. But the thing is, they didn't recognize their values. So in Sri Lankan context, we did a survey and go and have a chat with 15 to 20 minutes in their home. So they fed up with their life. So they don't have a value. So then it simply says, if we organize the home-based workers, we are adding values to their life. So understand their self and how should be respect their works, and they should come out their voices. So like that. So then they understand how they can work with other peers. And the thing is, in other way, we did one of the market survey also. So that says there are so many big giant company. They don't, home-based workers cannot compete with that companies. So therefore, if they work together, they can compete better than that big giant, because it's a large number of home-based workers. So that's one of the competitive edge that they can gain. And another thing is, they can get large-scale quantity, that cost of productions can be reduced. So if they purchased as a group, so all the wholesalers and suppliers would like to offer it at discounted rate. So it's one of the gain that we can. So therefore, so it's one of the advantages if we organize home workers in our country. And it's another way we can highlight the governments, their contributions. So what they're doing. So there are so many ministries, but even they don't recognize. But if we organize them, then they will be recognized. That's it.
Robinji, the next, you talked about cooperatives. So I wanted to ask, what are the forms of social enterprises that your country has?
Well, since last 10 years or so, Nepal has opened up, a company registration of the company for not distributing profit. One is solely profit motive company, and in Nepal now you can register yourself as not for distributing profit company. So that is something very new. So most of the social enterprises are registered as company for not distributing profit, and now a lot of the cooperatives. Earlier I mentioned a little bit about cooperatives. There are cooperatives working in various fields. Like, there are consumer cooperatives, there are multi-purpose cooperatives, savings and loans. But multi-purpose and consumer cooperatives, they can do business as well. So they're doing, all kinds of production and marketing their products. So they're also considered as a social organization because, the cooperative norm, it requires them to limit their profit to 15%. Right, so that way, we can consider them as social also. Just to elaborate further, now these social organizations are coming up, targeting different groups. And SABAH is focusing on home-based workers, and there are organizations who are focusing on disabled people, single women, or elderly people. So company of elderly people. So all sorts of social organizations are coming up in Nepal. So it's good to see, people who are working from home, even home-based workers are categorized in so many different ways.
Right, thank you. Would anyone else like to add perspective from the country?
Yeah. In Sri Lanka, it's a different form available. It's like we can start by associations, like Sangathan. And the other thing is we can go for partnerships. And then it's there is a company act in Sri Lanka. It's one of the new act. It says we can go for a limited by guarantee company. And the public quoted companies also can be GOs. So if they can invest, if home-based workers want to invest, so they can invest as a public quoted company. It's a big process, but it's take time. That is one of the form that we can. It's easily we go for with that associations as well as cooperative society also in Sri Lanka there. So it comes under Cooperative Act.
I think when it comes to Bhutan, we are not so, progressive or advanced in that sense that, like in Nepal and in Sri Lanka, where you actually have the legal framework for registering as association or as a social enterprise. In the case of Bhutan, the concept of social enterprises is not well understood, but we are practicing. And I think because legally speaking, the only possibility is to come under the Civil Society Act, under like an NGO. But then, for sustainability of the NGOs, for the NGOs to continue, especially when it comes to, working for marginalized and for women and for youth, etc., then the NGOs tend to, help facilitate for empowering the communities, trying to set up small businesses, which are basically, in principle, social businesses. And, the profits are then not for distribution, but really for, enhancing the work on the ground. But very recently, registered under the Companies Act, one of the districts actually in the northern part of Bhutan, they have actually come up with a new thing which we are hoping that the other districts and other communities will pick up also, like a community-owned company based on water production, like a bottling of water. So the entire, all the households of that district actually are shareholders of the company. It's a bit like your, the community, COB or whatever you call it here. So there we are calling it community-owned company. And they are doing it because we don't have a not-for-profit registration, possibility. So then they are registering under the regular businesses like under Companies Act. But it is like every member of the community has a share. It's a bit like your SABAH format here also. Yeah, and then increasingly many of the, especially I think for women and youth CSOs and NGOs, they are practicing. And I hope that in the near future there will be a possibility for legal registration as well for such companies.
Just as my colleague was saying, in Bhutan, NGOs have to depend on grants. And for quality and other issues, until unless you make the home-based workers realize that you are a group and you have to work for the market, they lose out. So right now, the kind of structures which are prevalent in India are producer companies, which are registered under the Companies Act. And Sadhna per se has been registered as a trust, which is a mutual benefit trust. And it was registered with the initial intention that it will be a professionally managed support to the home-based group, and then develop the home-based members to take on the managerial role. So that in future, one can say, it will be managed by the entire artisans group only.
पाकिस्तान के कानून के तहत जो है वो हम कोऑपरेटिव और कोई उस तरह यूनियन रजिस्टर्ड नहीं कर सकते, यूनियन नहीं बना सकते, कोऑपरेटिव नहीं रजिस्टर्ड कर सकते. तो हमने छोटी छोटी हमारी जैसे कराची में हैदराबाद में चूड़ी वर्कर हैं, हमारे कराची में गारमेंट्स वाली हैं ख़वातीन, तो उन्होंने छोटी छोटी अपनी फेडरेशंस बनाई हुई हैं. और इसी तरह जो है वो हमारी जो कढ़ाई वाले लोग हैं, इन्होंने हमने अपना सबा पाकिस्तान के नाम से जो कंपनी रजिस्टर्ड करवाई हुई है, तो कंपनी उसमें है और फेडरेशन.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm well aware of the fact that all your organizations are membership-based organizations of home-based workers, and on your board you have home-based workers as key decision makers. All of you also at different stage of development. But you know, one thing which is common is all of you were a startup at some point of time, right? My next question to all of you is, what are the critical support systems that are required to set up a social enterprise of home-based workers?
हमारी जो गवर्नमेंट्स हैं, इनकी बहुत ज़्यादा सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत होती है कि हमारी जो रजिस्ट्रेशन के जो मेंबर्स हैं हमारे, उनकी रजिस्ट्रेशन के लिए आसानियाँ पैदा करें. क्योंकि ये कंपनी रजिस्टर करने के लिए भी बहुत, जैसे अभी तो सबा ने सपोर्ट की हुई थी, STF का फंड था जिसकी वजह से जो है वो कंपनी रजिस्टर होगी. तो हमारी जो है वो कंपनी रजिस्ट्रेशन के लिए भी काफ़ी वो पेचीदगियाँ होती हैं, उसमें काफ़ी वो चीज़ें ज़रूरत होती हैं. उसमें वो जो शुरू में जो है रजिस्ट्रेशन फ़ीस होती है वो जमा करवानी पड़ती है. तो ये हमारी गवर्नमेंट को चाहिए कि वो हमारे लिए जो है वो इस तरह से जो हमारी फेडरेशन है या कंपनी है जो भी है उसकी रजिस्ट्रेशन आसान बनाए.
Anybody would like to add?
I would say for a social enterprise, you always need a patron to start it off. Either in form of a market who understands the work which has been done. Yes, quality and everything is important. Without that, any enterprise cannot run. But initial days, you need the support of a patron who understands the good work which is being done. And then to regularly grow further, that design strengths and which is there, to keep up with the markets. I think some kind of a support will always be needed for, one cannot say a social enterprise, once it's floated, it will work on its own.
In the case of Bhutan, as I was saying earlier, since our women are home-based workers are scattered all over the country, and villages are small, so especially for SABAH Bhutan, I think the initial challenges, and I think it still continues in terms of making it happen. We really had to actually do a lot of mobilization and outreach to try and actually induct the women into the concept of coming together, working together for collective, building capacity and collective marketing and bargaining power, etc. So I think that was really necessary. And then gradually over a period of time, now we have after mobilizing, thousands of women around the country, now we have more and more women actually sometimes voluntarily coming forward to be a part of the SABAH family, the SABAH groups on the ground, because they have a sense of, ownership, sense of pride in being part of this thing. And I think it also has come about because of the branding. because now especially when you come to the capital city and look around also, the products that are coming out of the SABAH outlets are of reasonable price but high quality, and that has been because there's been consistent supervision, monitoring, coaching and all that. So I think there's a lot of effort, I think, on the capacity building, mobilization, outreach part of it, but then becoming again more reliable and consistent. And then over a period of time, I think then women do come forward to be also part of it, because they do graduate. Some of them, they now initially, and then there's a lot of sense of pride in being a part of this, because they have graduated from being just a regular member to become a master tailor or a master designer or whatever. So I think it's a continuous effort to mobilize and build capacity. That is important. And I think finance is also very important. I think financial support and like microfinancing, and trying to really help, I think, groups to access other forms of capacity and financing is also important, I think, in order for groups to grow.
Actually, I would like to add financial support should be there. So there are some organizations, they offer the microfinancing it at higher rate. Home-based workers couldn't afford that. So therefore, government should have a schemes for that. And the other thing is, we need to have a good directions with private sector, because there are so many social workers. They could give an opinion, and their works can be added to social aspect. But the social enterprise, in enterprises, there is a profit motive. We should be such. Therefore, we should get a collaboration with private sector. Then they have a good idea and to drive the business. So how develop the strategies to win markets like that. So if we can collaborate with the private sector as well as the government sector. So as an example, there are some challenges in government sector. So I have been visiting one of the program director general. He has been, that position has been changed 6 times. So I go and again and explain the situation. We are doing this kind of thing. So therefore, we should have a good open discussion, or even written documents. We have to work this organization like that. So we need a government support like that.
Well, I fully agree with Dinusha. Yeah, I mean, to start up any kind of business, first you need an idea, like, why you want to do your business. And right after that, you would need a business plan. So business plan requires investment, right? So for that investment, in Nepalese context, there are many access to finance is available from the government side, microfinance. Even commercial banks are now obliged to give loans in better rates for deprived sector. And now, in recent days, we are seeing a lot of venture capitalists are coming to Nepal to support, startups. So startup funds are there, angel investors are also there. So yeah, I mean, most important thing is the idea, and to realize what your ideas are. Then you need investment. So I mean, given that these groups are already there, then building capacities to make products to the end market, you require capacity building for of all sorts. But having that business sense is very important. And what we see in groups is that they would want to do business, but what lacking, one of the lacking things I recognize is the entrepreneurial spirit amongst the home-based workers. Not everyone wants to take that risk. Going into business is taking a risk, and they do not want to see that risk component. If you do not want to overcome that risk factor, then I think you cannot be really successful in business. So you can envision all kinds of, fantastic ideas, but even in business plan, you need to have a contingency plans. So with investment and, that hunger to do, business and, that risk-taking ability are the keys, I think, in going into business. And in Nepalese context, we see a lot of youngsters, have gone into all kinds of startups now. Now they go into boot camps to learn about the business plans from, mentors from, business, private sectors and all kinds of financial sectors.
Some of you did touch upon it, that there are 4 Sabahs here, and you were initiated by SAG Development Fund, who provided you funding, HomeNet South Asia, who helped you organize home-based workers and create partnerships, while SABAH provided you technical support. But this is about a decade back, and now you've moved on. What are the current challenges that you face of running a social enterprise of home-based workers?
In my experience, we should have a good team spirit. Because right now it's a high labor turnover rate in some of the organizations. So we should keep skilled people, and they should have a sense of home-based workers. Otherwise, we could. That is one of the challenge. So it's high-skilled laborers come and go from our organization. And some of the people who came with that, their personal objectives, not the SABAH objectives. So that's a bit of challenge managing. And another thing is the home-based workers are scattered. They're having a transportation problem. So we need to address. And it's if it is transport, there are extra cost add to their product. Then its cost of production goes up. Its margins getting down. So at the end of the day, so if we look at our income statement, so it's low profit. So then it's directly impact on our sustainability. Therefore, so one of the factor. And another thing is climate changes. There's so many things that have been affect their business. So if it takes some governments, if it is governments unstable, there are some policy decisions comes and then in effect. So in my experience, I went at a law formulation meeting. So it's one of the food law coming in next year. It comes under that non-communicable diseases. Stop that because of that they bring regulations for salt and sugar and oil. So we should label the level of sugar and oil as well as salt. So it can't be bared by the home-based workers. This is very cost, and it should be the 4-color label. So therefore, one of the challenge that we have overcome, we convince the regulation parties, but they say we should implement, but sometimes in future it will be effect for home-based workers also. And another thing is external respect, like there are some materials which is based on that import. So in Sri Lanka, it's continuously the exchange rate is going up, its dollar value. It directly increase the cost of productions. So due to increase of raw materials. So like that, so those are the challenges that we are facing. Therefore, anyway, we have to manage it by focusing right market or collective and agreement. So like that, we should address those problems.
I think, in some ways, I find there's a little bit of missing link, given the huge investment that was made since the SABAH, project from the SDF was a flagship project, and it could have actually led to some sort of a policy. It could have led to some kind of a policy influence at the SAC level in each of our countries. because I think the whole, the idea behind it was very beautiful and I think it led to actually in these entities now that we have in each of our countries, we have the SABAHs, but it's not uniform. The way it's being run, it's been left very organic to the groups that were there in each country that took it forward. And from an initial, sense of where we had like even the government's participation, for instance, especially in the board of SABAH Bhutan, for instance, we used to have the Ministry of Finance, we had the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then we had the National Commission for Women and Children. So it was there was a bit of an anchoring also in the government, but then when there was a strong push to become sustainable and follow the business models that were forced on each SABAH to survive and to sustain, then it went more and more aggressively into it forced us to become more into a more business model of profit making. And for us, for instance, in Bhutan, each and every time we meet as a board, we are always reminding ourselves about the original mandate, based on which the SABAHs were conceptualized, and for basically empowerment of women home-based workers, to improve the livelihoods of our women home-based workers, to give them that platform. And then depending on where our home-based workers are economically and socially, I think it'll really, then they can benefit by that much. But I think if we now, in each of our countries, I think the SABAHs are either as registered as companies or as NGO. Now, especially when we are registered, in the case of Bhutan, we didn't have the possibility to register as a not-for-profit company, so we are registered as a NGO, as a civil society organization. And while the mandate remains with us, and we are consciously very, very aware and very conscious of the original mandate, when it comes to sustainability, taking it forward, it's quite a challenge financially. Because originally when we were conceptualized and we launched, and for the last 10 years, 7-8 years, we had comfortable funding from the SDF, but then suddenly we've just been cut off. It's like the umbilical cord has been cut off, and we are supposed to manage on our own, and it's quite difficult financially. I think that's a challenge to continue, and it's not even as if during those the tenure of the SDF funding, that all the goals and objectives are achieved. They were not achieved. We are on the path now. We've started, and I think ideally speaking, there should be a continuation of funds so that the original mandate is not lost.
STF के फ़ंड के बारे में थोड़ा सा ये बताना चाहती हूँ कि इसका बेसिकली जो STF का फ़ंड का वो मकसद था, बिज़नेस का वो था कि पूरा इसको जो होम बेस्ड वर्कर हैं उनका एक बिज़नेस स्टेबल वो उस तरह से हो जाए। तो इसमें जो है काफ़ी ज़्यादा चीज़ें थीं, जिसमें बिल्डिंग हमें मिल गई। इससे पहले जो प्रोजेक्ट थे, कभी किसी में कोई बिल्डिंग नहीं थी। ज़मीन हमने ख़रीद ली, उसमें हमारी परमानेंट अब जगह बन गई है। उसमें जो मेंबरशिप हमारी हो गई, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग हमारी हो गई, हमारे TFC CFC जो है वो बन गए। लेकिन अब जो है टाइम ख़त्म हो गया, क्योंकि ये बिज़नेस उसका था। तो STF की थोड़ी सी एक जो उसमें इस प्रोजेक्ट की कमज़ोरी ये थी कि टाइम पे फ़ंड रिलीज़ नहीं हुए थे, जिसकी वजह से, क्योंकि ये बिज़नेस के लिए पैसा जो है वो रोज़ के रोज़ चाहिए होता है। तो उसमें जो है ये चीज़ें बाकी सारी तो हो गई, लेकिन उसमें मार्केटिंग का जो हिस्सा है वो अभी भी उसमें काम करने की ज़रूरत है। जैसे हमने सोचा हुआ था कि इंटरनेशनल मार्केट को टारगेट करेंगे, वो नहीं हो सका। उसके लिए अभी 5 साल और हमें चाहिए। इसी तरह से जो है वो हमारी जो होम बेस्ड वर्कर थी, उनको हमने डायरेक्ट बायर के साथ लिंक करवाना था। तो उसमें भी जैसे हमारी टोटल मेंबरशिप के अंदर जो है वो 30 ग्रुप जो हैं वो डायरेक्ट जो है वो लिंक हो चुके हैं डिज़ाइनर्स के साथ, लेकिन अभी मज़ीद जो है वो उनको और भी ज़रूरत है। तो इसमें और दूसरी चीज़, एक तो ये सबा का उसमें था, और दूसरा जो है होमनेट पाकिस्तान और होमनेट साउथ एशिया की कोशिशों की वजह से हमारी जो ड्राफ्ट पॉलिसी बनी है, और फिर जो है वो 2 हमारी स्टेट्स में वो अप्रूव भी हो चुकी है। तो अभी उसको 2 स्टेट्स में जैसे वो अप्रूव होने के लिए जितनी कोशिश की गई थी, उससे आधी या उससे थोड़ी सी और कम बाकी के 2 के लिए भी ज़रूरत है। तो वो करनी चाहिए.
If I may, bring in business jargon, conventional business, it says that just like human life cycle, business also has a life cycle. Sabahs, we started up, we set up everything. Now we were in introductory phase. In regards to SABAH Nepal, we are in growth phase. In the growth phase, business, it really grows. But now we should be careful about the decline stage. It will be coming soon. So for that, in business, they say that, there's a S curve. So you need to realize that, decline will come, then you need to, develop that S curve, right? So now I'll bring this, back to the context of the home-based workers. So they are not really professionals. So how will they think about all these things? How will they plan their businesses? I'm talking in regards to the community centers, and which is running like a business now, right? So for that, what SABAH Nepal has done is, we have now, we used to have 4-pronged strategies. Now we have 6-pronged strategies. We added in business development support component to our interventions. So now we have business experts in house, they analyze their business, and they provide support. It can be in regards to market research or design development. So there are so many other things. So these are certain challenges every one of us will face. Business won't be constant. There'll be change in demand, right? The market demand will keep on changing. So we'll need to make products according to the market demand. So how do you do that? I think an R&D is very important. So, which we haven't been able to do so much. And another one is our cost of production is quite high compared to conventional businesses, because, the way we do things is different. Right, so we work with special people, and they have special needs. Our, if you cannot compete with market, competitors, then it's your business is not going to sustain for a long time. So these are, there are a lot of challenges. To be honest, in growth stage, it's even more challenging. I think you have so many operations to look at, and your business is so diverse. You're not focusing on one thing, so you can so you have to think about changes in so many different businesses. So challenges are real, and it's really keeping us on our toes. And yeah, we are looking for any kind of support out there, even from private sector or INGOs, the government sectors. So we are trying to involve all stakeholders to sustain the business. And I'll just add one more point to this. If we are to remain as a small business as we are right now, we can sustain, I feel. But if we are to reach out to more and more home-based workers, and if you are to replicate, our business model, in different parts of the country, and involve more and more home-based workers, how are we going to do that? Now, in Nepal's context, we have, when we were with SDF, we had only 3 CFCs. Now, we have 8 CFCs. Back then, we were in 11 districts. Now we are in 23 districts. That was, this was possible because, we partnered with, all kinds of organizations. It was not for funding, but it was to reach out to more and more home-based workers. I think these kind of opportunities should be there. And so, we can, but bigger objective of, SABAHs is to, make a business association of the home-based workers, and not only a limited number of home-based workers, right? So there's a long way to go. Challenges will be there, tomorrow there'll be a different kind of challenge, right?
Seema ji, Sadhna has been there in the business for many years, much longer than Sabahs. Do you have an opinion on this?
I would say market competition is very tough. Just as Robin was saying, cost of production for running a social enterprise is always higher. because women work from home. And right now the current challenge which we face is aspirations of our home-based workers have gone up. Cost of production is going up, but their aspirations in terms of okay, what is the growth for us? And because home-based workers come with their time limits in which to produce, and handcraft is a time-bound thing, it cannot be overnight increased. The production capacity cannot be overnight increased. So how do I sustain market competition with the aspiration levels of the home-based workers? So that is only if we live up with the design changes. It's a challenge, but I think we will overcome it.
Right. A lot of you touched upon this, but I want, if you've missed out, that is, what is the support that you're looking out from the government, from the private sector, and from people in general?
I would say from the angle of support, yes, one has to understand there is a market and design capacity which will not be with the artisans. So to provide that kind of a support, any social enterprise, which I said, either as a patron, either as a buyer who understands the work which is being done, or the buyer brings in the design support, which will keep on helping us in the growth. So that I would say will help us in sustaining growth, sustaining that we have already done.
So, I mean, see, SABAH, we had envisioned, there would be need for market. So we had envisioned collective marketing back in 2012. And unfortunately, we couldn't really get into that. Because, South Asia is a big market in itself. So we are trying to, fulfill the needs of the local market. But, if we incorporate, home-based workers of all regions, then, we would be needing bigger market in regards to, bigger market, who demands for, the products that we make, right? So it's not only the population. So I think collective marketing is the key for success of all the SABAHs, because, our objective is the same. And, we can make products for the, requirement of the market. And another thing is see, governments, see, in this part of the world, we are still developing, and our needs are how to alleviate poverty. So government of Nepal, in context of Nepalese, in Nepalese context, they have all kinds of programs for poverty alleviation. So they give capacity building, they give all kinds of training, entrepreneurship training, and all. So SABAH has sort of formed a business model, which can be sustainable. So I think we need to tie up with government programs, and there are so many international non-government organizations we are supporting in this regard, right? So we should be tying up with these organizations and take our business model and forward and replicate our business model in different parts. So we need to be partnering. So I see the role of HomeNet South Asia here, because so we are a network of home-based workers, right? So you are supporting organizations who work for the home-based workers. How you can link us to the market is one. How you can link us to the organizations who are working for development and who are trying to help the marginalized people, right? I mean, home-based workers are definitely there. So so networking is very, very important, and it's really good that we are all here and we are sharing our thoughts. I mean, we don't see really different problems each of us are facing. Our issues are the same, right? So I think if we work together and form this collective brand, which we envisioned back then, SABAH brand, it's not of particular country. And if you can do collective marketing, because marketing is quite expensive and brand promotion is very expensive. So we have already set up this brand. If we can do this collectively, I think we can realize our dream much faster.
I was also thinking maybe here in terms of what kind of supports are required for social enterprises and for the growth of it, multiplication of it in our countries. I think that's where, like Robinji rightly said, I think HomeNet South Asia has a role in terms of, I think, getting our governments to recognize home-based workers as a sector that will actually eventually contribute to significantly to the economy. It already does in an invisible way, but really increasing the visibility of it and recognized as a sector. Because in the end, I think we do need policy and legal frameworks in our countries that recognize social enterprises, and because I think especially for at least some of our small countries, we are dependent on donor funding. And the aspiration of, whether it is home-based workers individually or even at the government level, the aspiration is to become more independent of external funding. And I think the future, strategy for achieving that kind of financial independence as a country also is, I think, through empowering your communities and, bringing them also out of this dependent welfare mode. And because otherwise in the past, I think development activities, whether it's by government or donor agencies, has always been to hand out, and then make communities more and more dependent. And then people become passive receivers, and passive participants of development. But I think through social enterprises, actually, we instill a sense of ownership and active participation and ownership, and through that, I think they become more empowered. And I think that's where maybe, at a regional level, HomeNet South Asia has a role in trying to facilitate that. And then for private sector and corporate entities in our countries, I think, again, if there is a strong government policy on, growth of social enterprises and support to it, then maybe there can be certain incentives, whether it's tax incentives or any other, for these private sector and corporate entities also to support and to be active in social enterprises. Because right now I think private sector and corporate sector, they are more into just profit making purely, and then they just do some small CSR here and there, very token sort of thing. But I think they need to expand that part of it and then become more into supporting social enterprises for youth, for home-based workers, for all kinds of groups. And that would be, I think, for the future, I think it actually contributes to the bigger objective of becoming more independent also, because communities become more empowered, home-based workers and everybody become more empowered, and financially the government also will become more independent of external funding in the long run.
गवर्नमेंट से हमें यही सपोर्ट की ज़रूरत है. एक तो हमें जैसे हमारी 2 उसमें स्टेट्स में हमारा वो होम बेस्ड वर्कर की जो वो है वो उसको कानून पास हो गया है, और बाकी जो है वो जगहों पे भी, दोनों जगहों पे वो हो जाए, फिर तो वो मान लेंगे हमारे ये होम बेस्ड वर्कर हैं. फिर उनके लिए कानून साजी की जाए, और फाइनेंशियल सपोर्ट की हमें ज़रूरत है. प्राइवेट सेक्टर से हमें, जैसे मुख्तलिफ़ तरह के इदारे हैं, होमनेट है, होमनेट साउथ एशिया है, तो जिस तरह से पहले ये काम कर रहे थे, तो अभी कुछ बीच में कुछ गैप आ गए. हमारा जो है वो मिलना बहुत ज़रूरी है आपस में. और जैसे हमारे सबा का मकसद था कलेक्टिव मार्केटिंग का, तो वो हमारी ब्रांड एक होनी चाहिए.
Thank you actually for carving out a very clear role for HomeNet South Asia, and members like you keep us relevant. So thank you once again. One last question I have. There is a lot of dialogue about future of work right now. We are, listening a lot about mechanization and technology coming in, and how over a period of time, workers like home-based workers will become redundant. So, as experts, I just want your opinion on that.
To me, future is mechanization is there, maybe in certain sector. But, what we have always heard, from the visionaries is like, future is handmade and future is natural. So being in this part of the world, I feel very proud that, we have both. So there's a huge, population, who are trying to go back to the nature, go back to the basics. Even like, developed world, go over there and, they are running their, even like, inside their department stores. They have a corner, it is like a, how do you say, in Nepali we call it kirana pasal, or that kind. So they are opened up kirana pasal inside their department store. So how can, they're saying like, no to plastics. So no to packaging. So they're buying things like, how we used to buy maybe, 10, 12, even there, it's there. But now, we have gone to packaging and packaged food, but, Western world is coming back to the basics, right? So I feel like, as long as we stay true to our originality, I don't think, that mechanization is going to really, dampen this whole our work, because our work is handmade, and machine cannot really replicate, handmade products. The aesthetics of machine-made products are very, very different. And handmade products are, I mean, if you are into handmade products, and you would never find that satisfaction in machine-made products. And people are already tired of machine-made products, even in this part of the world. So we are social beings, and we cannot be really, mechanized. So I think that social, beings. That social feelings, or that kind of human touch will always be there. So I'm not a bit worried about mechanizing. Definitely those mechanization, and even we are like bringing in small technologies to make things efficient for production efficiency. But the core, the work will still be a handmade. So I'm like I said, I'm not really worried about that part.
Actually, the future is depending on the green marketing. Because a lot of people are, as Robin said, that they are looking for natural products. The thing is, nowadays people don't have a time. So that comes the technology part. They go for online purchasing. So if we come to that home-based workers products, so we want to deliver online. But the thing is, if the home-based workers couldn't match the lead time and buyer demand as they requested, so that is a technology gap there is, because the home-based workers doesn't have a sense about technology. We should develop their capacity, how we engage with the technology. So in terms of the market side. And production sides, we are in the food business, so it's a new packaging are coming. So like flexible packaging and in-one packaging, it's so cost. So therefore, we need to address that aspect also. How do we overcome that? So therefore, we need to have buyer requirement packaging by reducing our cost. That's it. I think in terms of technology, we have to overcome those things.
Seemaji, would you also like to add to it?
Yes, artificial intelligence and everything is coming in the picture, but I don't know. We are human beings, and we would like to remain with nature. So, just as Robin was saying, the products which home-based workers made are all handcrafted, and people would like to go back to the nature. So, yes, challenges will come, but there will be means to overcome those also.
What I see is that even in a very landlocked and country like Bhutan, and very scattered, and then also the literacy level in the rural areas being quite low, with the advancements of information technology, with fiber optic lines all over the country, and communications have improved dramatically actually. From no landline phone to now jumping to 4G, and maybe tomorrow it's 5G. I think with that we find that, and then with so many apps for which you don't really need literacy in that sense, education in that sense. So with smartphones and social media, with everybody, like you'll find even in very remote rural areas, people are with very basic smartphones, using Facebook and WeChats and other apps for marketing. So I think we find that on Facebook nowadays there's a lot of these Bhutan, like eBay kind of thing. So BBay, buying and selling going on online. And you'll find that so many of them are actually home-based workers who are, just selling their few products, which whether it's a pickle, whether it's dried chilies, whether it's some dried greens, vegetables, or it's some textile that they've woven, they're selling. And it's selling really well. So I think, on one hand, there are also, possibilities, especially through projects like ours. I think we can, help to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of, through the, labor-saving devices of various kinds, which can help the women to produce more and higher quality stuff. But on the other hand, I think the social marketing through social media, I think is also here to stay for a long time. So I think that also helps our social home-based workers to fit into the changing scenario.
Thank you, all of you. You provide such good lessons to other organizations who are also aspiring to start worker-led models. So thank you once again, and let's hope you can handhold some other organizations across the world